I stood at the altar, heart racing, dress flowing around me, everything I had dreamed of since I was a little girl finally coming to life. The music swelled, the guests rose, and I looked into the eyes of the man I loved, ready to step into forever. But just when the priest began to speak, a voice cut through the air, sharp, cold, and venomous. It was my cousin, Sarah. She stood up in the crowd, her face twisted with fake concern, and said words that sent shockwaves through the room. He should know the truth before he makes a mistake. Every head turned, every breath caught. She launched into a story, lies, carefully crafted, delivered as though she were saving him from me. She claimed I had been unfaithful, that I was marrying him for money, that I was not the woman he thought I was. Gasps filled the air. My fiancé looked stricken, his hands twitching at his side, doubt clouding his eyes as whispers spread like wildfire. Imagine standing there, in front of everyone you love, in front of the man you are about to marry, and watching it all collapse in seconds. My hands shook, my throat closed, and I felt myself unravel while Sarah stood there, pretending to wipe away a tear, enjoying every moment of my humiliation. That night, the wedding was called off. Guests left in uneasy silence, their eyes avoiding mine, their whispers cutting deeper than knives. My fiancé, no, my ex-fiancé, told me he needed time, that he was not sure what to believe. Sarah had gotten exactly what she wanted, the destruction of my happiness. She smiled as she left the hall, her arm linked with her boyfriend's, her voice low but loud enough for me to hear. Some people are not meant to have it all. I cried until my body ached. For days, I could not eat, could not sleep, could not face the world. My wedding photos, the decorations, the dress, all reminders of the day my cousin ripped away from me. And yet, beneath the tears, beneath the devastation, something else began to stir. Anger. Sarah and I had grown up together. We had shared secrets, laughed through summers, whispered dreams late at night. I had trusted her, loved her like a sister. And she had destroyed me. Not because she had to, not because she cared about my fiancé, but because she could not stand to see me happy when she was not. In the weeks that followed, the pain hardened into something sharper. Sarah thought she had won. She thought she had ruined me forever. But she had made a mistake. She had shown me exactly what she was capable of, and in doing so, she had given me the clarity to plan. Because as fate would have it, just 1 year later, Sarah announced her own engagement. And when I heard the news, I smiled for the first time in months. She had taken my wedding from me. But hers? Hers was going to be unforgettable, for all the wrong reasons. I made a vow that night. When Sarah walked down the aisle, she would finally understand what it felt like to have everything ripped away in front of the world. When Sarah announced her engagement, she did it the same way she did everything else, loud, dramatic, and designed to draw attention. She called the family together, her sparkling ring flashing under the lights as she waved her hand, pretending to blush while secretly basking in the envy of everyone around her. People clapped, hugged her, congratulated her. She looked over at me more than once, searching for a reaction, a flicker of bitterness she could feed on. But I smiled. I hugged her. I whispered, "I am so happy for you," even though my chest burned with the memory of how she had humiliated me. From that day forward, I played the role of the forgiving cousin. I helped her pick out venues, pretended to gush over her dress, even offered to assist with the guest list. She lapped it up, never once suspecting that beneath my smiles was a carefully growing plan. Because if I had learned anything from my ruined wedding, it was this: sabotage works best when no one sees it coming. I began gathering secrets, listening carefully during her endless planning rants. She bragged about her fiancé's family, wealthy, proud, obsessed with reputation. She complained about her bridesmaids, about her own insecurities, about how terrified she was that her fiancé might discover things from her past. Every word was a thread, and I wove those threads together until I had a web strong enough to strangle her big day. Her fiancé, Mark, was kind but naive, the kind of man who believed what he was told. He loved Sarah blindly, almost desperately, and she used that to her advantage. But love, I knew, is fragile when placed under pressure. And pressure was what I planned to apply. The first opportunity came sooner than expected. One evening, While scrolling through old social media photos, I stumbled across something Sarah had long forgotten. Pictures of her with an ex-boyfriend. They were not innocent photos either. They were intimate, reckless, the kind of images that could raise questions if seen at the wrong time. I saved them quietly. Next, I dug deeper. I knew Sarah had lied before, but I wanted proof. I reconnected with people she had wronged in the past, friends she had betrayed, co-workers she had stolen credit from, even the ex who had posted those photos. Each one had a story, each one a piece of the puzzle that revealed who Sarah really was beneath the glittering mask she wore. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how fragile her entire wedding facade truly was. She had spent months painting herself as the perfect bride-to-be, but underneath, she was still the same selfish, envious cousin who had destroyed me. And now, I had the chance to return the favor. Because weddings, I had learned the hard way, are not just about love. They are about image, about trust, about the illusion of perfection. And all it takes is one whisper, one crack, to make the whole thing collapse. Sarah had taught me that lesson. Now, I was going to teach it back to her. The first strike had to be subtle. Too direct, and Sarah might trace it back to me. Too weak, and it would not rattle her enough. I chose precision. At a family dinner, just weeks before her bridal shower, I mentioned casually how interesting it was that Mark and Sarah had found each other. I tilted my head, smiled sweetly, and said, "It is funny, because Sarah used to say she could never settle down with someone like him." The table went quiet. Mark laughed at first, but I caught the flicker in his eyes. Doubt, small but sharp. Sarah's face stiffened, her smile faltering before she quickly brushed it off with a laugh of her own. But the seed had been planted. From there, I began sprinkling more seeds. Small, offhand comments disguised as jokes, whispered reminders of her past disguised as slips of memory. I never said enough to expose myself, just enough to make Mark wonder. And the more he wondered, the more Sarah's carefully crafted image cracked. Then came the bridal shower. It was supposed to be perfect, a garden event with pastel decorations, laughter, gifts, and champagne. Sarah had spent weeks planning every detail. But perfection, I knew, could be shattered in seconds. Halfway through the party, one of the bridesmaids opened a beautifully wrapped box with Sarah's name on it. Inside was not a gift. It was a printed photo, one of the old, reckless images I had saved of her with her ex. Gasps erupted around the table, the laughter silenced instantly. Sarah's face drained of color, her hands trembling as she snatched the picture away. She stammered excuses, claimed it was ancient history, claimed it meant nothing. But the whispers had already begun. Mark heard about it later that night. He confronted her, his voice sharp, his trust shaken. She tried to spin the story, to twist it into something harmless, but I knew him well enough by then to recognize the truth. He was rattled. The perfect bride he thought he knew suddenly had cracks in her story, and those cracks were only going to widen. The final trap came together piece by piece. I gathered every fragment of Sarah's deceit, every lie she had told, every reckless mistake she thought was buried. I organized them neatly, not to spread widely, but to strike with precision at the right moment. And that moment would be her wedding day. Imagine standing where I once stood, at the center of the aisle, believing you are untouchable, believing the world is watching you shine, only for it all to be ripped away in an instant. That was the lesson Sarah had taught me at my wedding, and that was the exact lesson I was preparing to teach her at hers. Her downfall would not come from me shouting in a crowded room. It would come from silence breaking at the perfect moment, a truth delivered so cleanly that no one could deny it. Her wedding day was approaching fast, and I was ready. The morning of Sarah's wedding was almost eerily familiar to me. The flowers, the music, the nervous laughter of family members moving between pews. All of it reminded me of my own day, the one she had destroyed. But this time, I was not the trembling bride. I was the calm shadow in the crowd, waiting for the right moment. Sarah looked radiant as she entered, her white gown sweeping across the floor, her smile wide and practiced. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect bride. To me, she looked like a lyre balancing on fragile glass. Mark stood at the altar, handsome and proud, but there was tension in the way he adjusted his tie, in the way his eyes flickered toward her. Doubt was already gnawing at him, planted weeks earlier, watered carefully until it grew. The vows began. Sarah's voice was sweet, trembling with emotion she had rehearsed. She spoke about loyalty, honesty, forever. Each word twisted like a knife in my chest, because I knew how false they were. I watched her bask in the admiration of the guests, watched her revel in the moment she had stolen from me once. But then came Mark's turn. His voice shook, not with love, but with unease. He paused, glanced at Sarah, then at the crowd. Something inside him was breaking. And then, right on cue, the silence was cut by a small ripple in the back of the room. A guest pulled out an envelope from their seat, one of many I had carefully placed before the ceremony began. Each envelope contained a truth. Copies of Sarah's old photos, stories from people she had hurt, fragments of the lies she had buried. Murmurs spread as more and more envelopes were opened, pages unfolding like poisoned petals. Mark's eyes locked onto one in the hands of his own brother. His face paled as he read, his hands clenching around the paper. He turned to Sarah, his expression torn between fury and heartbreak. The room erupted into whispers, gasps, shifting bodies. Sarah's mask cracked instantly. Her voice faltered, her arms shaking as she tried to keep smiling, tried to hold everything together. But the damage was done. Mark stepped back from her, his jaw tight, his chest heaving. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice low but cutting through the noise. She stammered, tears springing to her eyes, reaching out for him, but he pulled away. The guests watched in stunned silence as the perfect wedding unraveled in front of them. The priest's voice faded into the background. The music stuttered into silence, and Sarah's dream collapsed like a house of cards. I sat there quietly, my hands folded in my lap, my face calm. No one looked at me. No one suspected me. To them, it was Sarah's past catching up with her. To me, it was justice. She had ruined my wedding by planting lies. I had ruined hers by planting the truth. And as Sarah broke down in front of her guests, mascara streaking down her face, I felt no guilt. Only a satisfaction that was sharper, deeper, than any applause could ever bring. Her world had collapsed, and I was the one who made sure it happened exactly the way she had once done to me. The reception never happened. Guests filed out of the church in stunned silence, their whispers following Sarah like a shadow she could never escape. Her dream gown was stained with tears, her carefully painted face smeared with desperation as she begged Mark to stay, to listen, to forgive. But he would not even look at her. His family surrounded him, shielding him from her touch, their expressions a mix of pity and disgust. I stayed behind, moving slowly, watching her unravel in the very spotlight she had once stolen from me. For a moment, she saw me. Our eyes met across the chaos. Her face contorted, rage, confusion, fear, all fighting for control. She knew, deep down, that I had something to do with this. But she had no proof. And that was the beauty of it. Later that evening, I found her alone in the bridal suite, her dress crumpled around her like a fallen crown. The guests had left, the music had died, the celebration had turned into ashes. She looked up at me, her eyes red, her voice broken. "You did this," she whispered. I leaned against the doorway, calm, collected. "No," I said softly. "You did this to yourself. I just made sure the truth was seen." Her lips trembled, but she had no answer. Because she knew I was right. She had destroyed me with lies, and I had destroyed her with truths she had tried to bury. From that night forward, Sarah's reputation never recovered. Mark broke off the engagement publicly, his family ensuring everyone knew why. The same friends and relatives who once praised her now avoided her, whispers of her downfall following wherever she went. Her envy, her cruelty, her need to see me suffer had brought her exactly what she feared most: humiliation. As for me, I walked away lighter. Not because I was petty, not because I wanted revenge for its own sake, but because I had restored balance. She had taken my happiness once, and I had shown her that betrayal carries a price. Life moved on. I rebuilt. I found love again, this time with someone who saw my worth without question. My wedding, when it finally came, was small, intimate, and perfect, untouched by sabotage. But sometimes, I still think back to that day in the church, to the look on Sarah's face when the walls of her lies crumbled. And I remind myself of one simple truth. Some people learn through kindness, and others only learn through the reflection of their own cruelty. She sabotaged my wedding, and in the end, I sabotaged hers. So I will leave you with this. If someone tried to destroy your happiness out of envy, Would you forgive and move on? Or would you wait for the perfect moment to give them a taste of their own medicine?